All right, welcome back to the Open Garage. This is a bit of a different video than you guys are used to, but uh, but it's really not. I mean, I want to start this podcast again, and because I enjoyed making it, and I think I want to do it again. Ultimately, reg- I'm waffling. Welcome back. Um, if you are new here, welcome. If you have been here a long time, uh, welcome back. So this week I think I'm going to stick to just very simple stuff. I'm trying to get back in the swing of making videos and stuff like that. So bear with me. Let me know if you guys like this one, the way it's filmed, the way it's set up. I'm trying to focus more on trying to make the videos look a bit nicer because I personally prefer that. Um, but yeah, it is last day of Ramadan for my Muslim brothers and sisters. Eid Mubarak. This is probably gonna be coming out on Eid, so Eid Mubarak. Um, but yeah, let's get right into it. I've researched a couple questions that I feel like answering, and I think that it would be helpful if I answered them. And it would be helpful. I mean, I'm just gonna answer them anyways, because whatever. All right. Uh, let's see. This is a good one, I guess. Are manual cars better than automatic cars? If so, then why? If not, then why? Listen, I think that to each their own. I feel like manual has its place in the hearts of every car guy. You know, if you enjoy cars, unless you like BMWs, in which case you're part of that DCT gang, which is fair. Honestly, I am in the school of thought that for BMWs and most German cars, I think they should be automatic, um, because German automatics are actually very very nice to drive, and ideally you'd want a German automatic. German manuals are just not there's not it. I will say though, for Japanese cars, Hondas, Toyotas, Subarus, um, a lot of these Japanese car companies, they make phenomenal manual transmissions. Some of the most popular manual transmissions, stuff that you'll find in older Civics, the transmissions in, uh, you know, I think that in terms of car choice, I think that Europeans should be automatic and Japanese cars should be manual, in my opinion, right? You want a manual BMW, go ahead. I understand the appeal of that too, and I understand the appeal of wanting an automatic uh, Japanese car. But I would say the differentiating factor is how you're going to be driving your car. I think if you are daily driving your car for long distances, uh, then a manual can be nice, depending on how much traffic you're going to have to encounter. Now, I have driven manual cars in traffic. I've driven automatic cars in traffic, and by far, automatic cars are much more comfortable to drive. That does not take away from the fact that manuals are much more fun to drive. However, it really is a trade off. It ends up being, do you want something more comfortable, or do you want something that's fun? Because the trade off is that if it's fun, it's not going to be as comfortable. And if it's comfortable, it might not be as fun for you. Some people are fine with automatics. Again, I completely understand that too. If I got a BMW, I personally would get an automatic, just because I personally just prefer BMWs and most German cars to be automatic, because they're more fun to drive that way. But yeah, I mean, realistically, honestly, it depends. I think when I get my first car, it's going to be a manual, even though, you know, most of the destinations or most of the places that I end up going are going to be pretty relatively far and on in highway traffic with, there's rush hour traffic. Like if you've been in rush hour traffic, you know how bad it is. But you know, it's like, again, it is to each their own. I personally think manuals are more preferable for me, just because I like having control over my vehicle, and I think automatics sometimes can be. I don't know. I think they're a little bit. What's the word? I would say they're kind of just they're all right. They're like eh. They're nothing crazy. I don't think that. I personally don't find the engaging driving experience that I'm looking for, mainly just because I am a car guy. You could see the posters in the back, obviously. Um, this channel is called The Open Garage. This is not a surprise to anyone. I very much am a car guy. I enjoy everything automotive related. Hopefully this summer I'm going to go to a couple car shows, so that'll be fun. Um, but yeah, to each their own. Leave a comment. What do you guys prefer, manual or automatics? If there's any sort of if there's any sort of you know balance of the two that you would prefer, if you would rather have a certain type of car be automatic or a certain type be manual. I think for my daily driver in the future, I would much rather have an automatic, not a CVT, because I hate CVTs. Do not ever buy a CVT. Like, if you are going to buy an automatic, buy an actual true automatic. 'Cause CVTs, in my opinion, they're just like the worst driving experience by far. I don't really consider them automatics because it's like one gear essentially. If you understand how CVTs work, it's one gear basically. But yeah, I think if in the future I had two different cars, I think my daily driver would be some sort of automatic German car, and then my little fun weekend car, or just like my stowed away car would be some sort of manual Japanese, maybe a Honda Civic or a Honda Accord, or maybe a Honda S2000. If the prices get a bit better, or I think that would be those would be my two. Um, let's see, I got a couple more. Um, why car culture is dying? I think this raises a good point. This is a pretty good question actually, because I think a lot of the time people equate a difference of opinion to bad car culture, but I think a difference of opinion is what makes a good car culture. I think car culture is derived from so many different schools of thought when it comes to uh, you know opinions about modifications or car design or wheel choice, or I think that calling the diversity or someone's taste being different from what yours is car culture dying, um, is a little bit of an insult, to whoever it may be. Now, I will admit there are some people that might do a lot of stuff that I might not like. There's a lot of different builds, let's say, that I am not a fan of, just because it's not my style. But you know what? Like, the more I think about it, and I think when I was a bit younger, I definitely had this same school of thought where I was like, oh, these people are ruining car culture because they think their car's cool, whatever it is. But that doesn't really change the fact that now my opinion very much has changed. I think I am a lot more. I think a lot more about what that car might make that person feel. And I know the question is why is car culture dying? But I think people equate this stuff with difference of opinion to car culture dying. Because someone's used to one thing for their whole life. If I'm used to waking up at 5 a.m. every day for my whole life, you look at someone that wakes up at 10 and you're like, what are you doing, you idiot? Why are you waking up so late? But to them, maybe they wake up at 10 because they work late and they go to sleep at 2 a.m. Maybe it's because they have their own responsibilities. Maybe it's because they had to feed their children last night. I think that keeping in mind that everyone else has their own opinion, and ultimately we can think whatever we want, but we should try to be understanding about what someone else might think about certain things. I think that that is very important. Um, but I don't actually think car culture is dying. I think that car culture has been a little bit maybe manipulated, I guess, because there's a lot of gurus. You can call them gurus, I guess. I'm gonna call them gurus. There's a lot of gurus that I guess sort of flaunt their wealth, which if I had a if I had a Ferrari, I probably would too. If I had a Ferrari and whatever it is, if I had a Lamborghini Huracan or whatever, maybe I would too. But at the same time, I think that it sort of planted a negative connotation to certain vehicles in people's minds. For example, the Porsche GT3 RS. Listen, believe me when I say I am sick of seeing this car just as much as everyone else is, and I cannot wait for these 12-year-olds to stop, you know, I guess overstating this car. But you cannot take away the fact that the people that own these cars own them because there's something about them that they like, whether it's the fact that it's a car that they've seen since they were a kid and they've always wanted, or it's a car that maybe their friends have, or, you know, if you know who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. There's a certain demographic of people in a circle of people that, one person buys something, maybe the rest of them want one. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that that is a valid motivation. That is a valid reason to want something. If someone else has something and you experience it and you are in it and you feel it and you're like, wow, this is something that I very much enjoy. I think that that's a completely valid reason to buy one yourself. The same way that, if someone I knew, if someone I knew was saying, "Hey, like I'm thinking about going to the gym," I would say, "Hey, come with me," because I've been going to the gym for about 4 years now. It'll be 4 years in September, and I think that I could maybe help them. Maybe maybe they come with me one time and they feel that magic that I feel whenever I go to the gym. Maybe they feel that pump for the first time. They're like, wow, I love this. This is amazing for me. And it's the same reason that a lot of other things motivate all of us in life. Like whether it's one thing or another, motivation is sort of dynamic in a way that no other emotion is. Motivation can not only change, but it can entirely flip. You know, I think motivation is one of those things where when I started going to the gym, my motivation was I don't want to be a fat little kid anymore. And I think now my motivation is I just want to build a body that, is healthy, you know? And when I started going to the gym, I think I very much emphasized the not wanting to be fat anymore. And I was doing it in a way that's not very healthy for me. But that doesn't change the fact that, at the time that motivation worked for me. The way I got into the gym is the only reason that I am here today. Is the only reason that I am still going to the gym to this day, 4 years later. And all that to say that I think that car culture is evolving more than it is dying. I think with the new trend of a lot of electric vehicles or, a lot of new technology, I think it's easy to kind of hate on other people's taste or say that car culture is dying, but the future is going to be the future no matter what. And ultimately all we can do is adapt to become more in tune with the people that are around us. Uh, it's not really. I guess I kind of made that. I kind of made that a really deep answer, but I genuinely think like I think this isn't really like a this is the reason I wrote this down is because I don't think that this is something that is true. I don't think car culture is really dying, mainly just because like I just think I think it's overstated entirely. I think that it's easy to yeah, again, like I've said this already, but yeah, it's easy to say, it's easy to look at anyone else and be like, yo, what are you doing? Like, why are you why do you like that car? Why are you doing what you're doing? But everyone has their opinion. And if anything, I personally believe that the diversity in the car community is what makes it a car community. Community has diversity, and ultimately, that's better for everyone else when there's more diversity. Let's look. I mean, I wrote a couple things down. Let me see. Ooh, okay. I got a bit personal on the last one, but we'll get personal on this one. Comparison. I kind of wanted to talk about. I kind of want to talk about it. Comparison. Um, you've probably heard the saying, "Comparison is the thief of joy," and I will say that I think that that is very, very accurate. Um, as someone that has compared myself to a lot of people in my life, I think a lot of the time it's very comforting, or I guess sort of easy to say point blank, I'm not doing enough because this person is doing more than me. But you know what? I've sort of realized that every person that I see at face value, but I see myself as myself. And what I mean by that is that only you know what you're dealing with. You don't really understand, or you can't really process what someone else is dealing with. So when I think about when I think about the people I compare myself to, or, you know, the people that I wish I was more like, I also have to think about what did they do to get to where they are? Where did what experiences that maybe they have that I didn't? What influences that they have that I didn't? And so it's not about trying to seek out being the same as someone else, because I don't want to be the same with someone else. Ideally, there's a lot of things that maybe I would want more for myself, right? There's a lot of things that maybe I'm not happy with about myself, and I'd rather those things change or be more like this, be more like that. But you know what? I'm happy with who I am, and there's a lot of things that make me who I am that only I know. The intricacies of my own mind. Only you know who you are, who you truly are. No matter who you tell, no matter who really knows you, even if you tell someone your every single fleeting thought, only you know who you are truly. And while that thought kind of seems sad or lonely, I think it's a point of reflection, and it should only be a point of reflection, because I personally think that if you're the only one that knows you, you sort of get into the mindset, or at least this works for me, you get into the mindset of knowing that you're the only one that can change your situation. And I, you know, all throughout high school, I was very much a chronic procrastinator, as I'm sure a lot of other people are. And, to an extent, I definitely still am. I know this about myself, and I'm actively trying to change it. But that's why I know this about myself. And only I really know how detrimental it's been for my mental health, for my sanity, my psyche. There's a certain amount of, I guess, peace that a person gets when they understand that they understand themselves better than anyone else can understand them. and I think that that's very understated in in general. I don't think that, you know, it's very, I don't know. I think it's been very helpful for me as someone who thinks very, very much. I'm a pretty, worry. I'm an anxious person in general. I worry about a lot of things at once, and that's just how my brain works. I can't do anything about that. What I can do is change my surroundings to, you know, to encourage a better framework of understanding what information is being given to me. Whether it's, sensory, like, whether I'm looking at something, smelling something. If it's, if, Let me put it another way. I think it's much easier to, uh, I guess, be present and understand who I am, when, uh, it's much easier to be present and understand who I am when I'm sort of, uh, being mindful and, sitting with whatever thought I might have. Uh, I very often try, my best to not be on social media, and it's kind of funny that I post on YouTube, but I try not to be on social media. But I'll tell you why. Is because I think the more I'm on social media, the less I end up thinking for myself. The less that I end up, you know, having thoughts that I wouldn't have if I was just doom scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. And I'm not saying that, I'm perfect or anything. I'm not saying that, it doesn't get me, because trust me, it gets me. Like, listen, Saturday nights, I like doom scrolling. It's like a mandatory. Like, it's hard for me to even, I can't even not do it, like, it's a given. But I do also enjoy the, part of, thinking for myself, mainly just because I get to, understand what is actually going on in my mind. I get to, I guess, analyze what thoughts I might be having without an outside source, or without a constant, um, without constant input from the outside world. And it's easy for me, I guess, to, like, just sit with my thoughts and really think about them, and try to work towards making them better. It's the one thing that I've really observed in my life is that the less I'm on social media and the more present I end up being, uh, the more just full I feel. I feel full of just life, and I feel like a person, and I feel like, I have, uh, I guess, I don't know. I think it's a nice feeling to just be there, be present for my life. I kind of felt like for a while that I was present in the virtual world more than I was in the actual world. And, I'm sure there's a lot of people that can differentiate the two, and, I wish I could, but I am just the type of person that can't really do that. I feel like I get very sucked in when I start doom scrolling, and it's not a good habit, obviously, but that's why we're talking about this, because, uh, it's very, very easy for me to compare myself to, any peers or any friends that might be doing this stuff better than me. But, ultimately, I am who I am, and I am who I am today because of the experiences that have molded me in my past. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so comparison sort of kills your progress. Um, and what I mean by that is, when I start making progress, or when you start making progress, and the first thing you start doing is comparing yourself to other people that might be making a bit more progress than you, you're sort of diminishing the progress that you've already made, because you might think that because this person has made more progress than me, I'm not doing enough. But by even making any progress, you're doing more than 90% of people are doing in that moment. By me making this video instead of doom scrolling on my phone on the bed that's right behind me, that, by the way, looks very, very comfortable. Instead of doing that, I am here. I'm making a video and I'm doing what I enjoy, even though I might be tired. I am fasting today. It is the last day of Ramadan, so I'm filming this in the afternoon, and I'm fasting today. So I'm very tired, and it could probably show on video. But ultimately, I didn't really I didn't compare myself to other people that are fasting today. I didn't say, oh, my friend was fasting and he, he did an exam, or like he was doing this or he was doing that, because I'll be honest, I do that sometimes, right? And it might not be ideal, but it's something that happens. It's human nature. And so trying to train myself to just be present in the moment and do what I feel like I want or I enjoy doing or what I need to do, that that is where progress really shows up. Being able to make videos like this and edit them like this, I personally have worked quite a bit to get to where I am, and I am proud of that effort that I've made. And so there's so many different I guess avenues and schools of thought or ways you can think about the way you're making progress. There's a lot of people that measure their progress in, if I get the finished product, then I am happy, but until I get there, I am going to be sad, or I'm going to be annoyed, or I'm going to be angry, or I'm going to be frustrated, or I'm going to be you know I'm going to be just I'm going to be a bitter person. But and that might work for a lot of people. A lot of people might go through life doing it that way, but I personally don't think that's a healthy way to go about it. I personally think that making sure that you allow yourself to experience life in the moment and really take in all the little victories that you might have makes life that much more worth it. I am Muslim, so praying is a pretty big part of my life. And so I prioritize my prayers. My prayers end up being a guiding stone for me. And I'm very happy for that. But that's why every single day when I end up praying all 5 prayers, it's sort of like it's automatically it makes me happy. Ultimately, finding something that every day can be a little win that you will be happy with yourself for doing is the best way to make progress. Doing little things every single day, because trying to do everything at once just doesn't work. Believe me, I've tried, doesn't work. But yeah, comparison is just like, don't diminish yourself because someone else might be doing better than you, because there's always someone doing better than you. No one's at the top of the world. No one. There's always someone doing worse than you, though. And it's easier to look at the negatives of wherever you are instead of looking at the positives. I started going to the gym 4 years ago, and I think 4 years ago, my max bench, was 70 pounds. So the bar and 7.5 on each side. That was my max bench. Okay. And now 4 years later, I have benched 300 successfully, and I've built I've built a decent amount of muscle that I'm very proud of. But it's interesting because I still feel like I'm not doing enough, and I think that feeling kind of always lingers in certain people's minds, at least in mine. and it's hard to kind of grapple with that feeling. But the one way that I've sort of uh, n- understood it or tried to make sense of it is that it's it's not it's it's still a good thing to feel like you're not doing enough, but it's not a good thing to not feel like you've done enough already. And I say this because it's, and I'll explain this because the way I said it was a little bit confusing. It's easy to say that you're not doing enough, right? I think that it's still important because saying that you're not doing enough is the way that a lot of people change, the way people grow, and the way people, um, you know, go into new eras and chapters of life. But you know what? It's so much easier to fall into the rabbit hole of feeling like you're not doing enough to to the point that you don't do anything because you're afraid, or you might be worried about whatever it might be, or you might say, oh, there's no point of even doing it because someone's doing it better than me. But you should never feel like you are not doing enough all the time. There are certain ways or certain little things that you should be trying to do that make you feel like you are doing enough. And I'll give you an example of a couple of things that I do. Um, there's a couple little, routines that I end up having throughout the day, routine groups. That's why I like to call them. But it helps me stay on track and helps me keep my routine pretty consistent. But my night, at night, my essentially my wind down routine is I put my phone down, I turn my phone off, and I'll pray. After my prayer, I'll journal a little bit. I might write down a little bit, and then I sleep. It's a half an hour wind down routine, and I leave myself enough time to sleep after half an hour, so I have enough sleep for the next day. Another one is I make overnight oats every night, and there's there's a I do that every single night, and then I eat them in the morning. And so little tiny routines like that remind me that I have, in fact, I have improved, I have progressed. Um, those little things give me the sort of motivation I might need to change a little more and a little more and a little more. And then all of these things stack on top of each other until eventually you're just a completely different person than you were when you started. Um, but uh, yeah, I don't think that it's it's not really it's not, I guess, healthy to always be comparing yourself to others. But I think that comparing yourself to the person you used to be is the best way to do any sort of comparison. And it has helped me a lot in my life. It has been very, um, you know, I guess, you know, it's changed a lot of the ways I think about myself and, my accomplishments. And I think you should, everyone should, try to figure something out that can make them feel that way. I think that that's one of the greatest gifts of life, is feeling like you are enough. And it's a robbery to make yourself feel like you're not. Um, yeah. I don't know what else. What else? There's not really much else I want to talk about. Realistically, this episode is already kind of long, but yeah, I talked about a lot. I talk a lot. Like I think that I am not the best at articulating my words, but let me know if you guys liked it. If you guys enjoyed this type of video. Um, I enjoyed making it, and yeah, let's I'll see. I guess we'll see what happens. I'm planning on making these every week, and they're going to be posted on Mondays, and so stay tuned for that. But that is about it for this week's episode. I will see you guys in the next one.